Welcome to Business Pulse Talk Radio. I'm your host, Michael Brette, and we have an exciting show for you today, as always. The topic for today is your source for success. And I'm going to get into more detail on what that means and how it affects you. But first, I want to give a background on who I am and kind of lay the foundation for today's topic as to the elements that we're going to be discussing. My company is called Small Cap Equity Advisors. We're a fee-based consulting firm, and we provide advice on a wide variety of transactional business matters, from startup consulting, business valuations, reverse mergers, Reg A+, registered direct offerings, crowdfunding, and private placements. I've got my doctorate degree in law for over 40 years, and I've written and published 2 books, one asset protection planning, the other raising capital for your business. I've been on over 300 television and radio shows through my 25-year career talking about a variety of different business and financial matters. And I've written recently 2 songs. I've been a songwriter for 50 years. I have 2 current songs that are out. One is called Awake at Midnight, and the other one is a Christmas song called Santa Flies Tonight. Now, having given you that little bit of overview, it'll help explain the topics we're going to get in here today. And, again, we've talked about this before. You don't need to write anything down. Just go to the show notes that will be posted at the end of each show to get all the details we're talking about, and then you can email me directly at mikebrette@gmail.com, and I can send you information also. Because we're not selling anything. We're not selling books, tapes. We're not selling financial products. Nothing in the show. Today's topic is we're going to show you how you can make money, not save money. This whole notion about you have to save for retirement is a bunch of hooey. Nobody can save money for retirement to have enough money to be comfortable and secure through savings. It just doesn't work. 75% of the baby boomers that have retirement age don't have $25,000 saved up for retirement. 65% don't have $400 set aside for an emergency. Savings do not work because people don't make enough money to set aside. Let me give you some examples. These figures will probably shock you. If you're 35 years old and you have 0 saved for your retirement, you need to put away over $1,300 per month in order to have $2 million by age 65. If you're 45 years old, but you already have $100,000 saved, you need to put aside over $3,000 per month in order to have $2 million by 65. One last point. If you're 55 years old and you have $100,000 set aside for retirement, you need to set aside over $10,000 per month in order to have $2 million in retirement by age 65. Now, I'm not saying that $2 million makes you extremely wealthy, but it's certainly a lot better than people that are trying to save $100 a month. And you hear all these financial planners on Fox Business TV or in the Wall Street Journal and everything, save at early age when you're 20, set $100 aside per month. People don't make enough money when they're 20 years old, 25 years old, and in their 30s to set enough money aside, $5,000 a month, $3,000 a month. They just don't have it because they're not making enough money. And it doesn't matter whether you're making minimum wage or if you're making, like $100,000 a year. You're never going to save enough money to reach this $2 million figure or higher by age 65 just by having a savings account or other types of saving vehicles. I know there are a lot of financial planners out there that are pushing annuities that are pushing mutual funds and other savings vehicles. I talk to people for the last 25 years. People are just not doing it. So I don't know how these financial planners are making money, but I want to show you in this show today how you can make money, and it doesn't involve savings. Now let's look. The old phrase, you need to have money work for you rather than you work for money, is, I know people say it seems trite sometimes, but it really is the case. Let's take some examples. Let's look at Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, Jeff Bezos, just those three people, multi-billionaires. They did not amass their wealth by investing in mutual funds, setting money aside in annuity, having an IRA or 401k, or a worthless savings account. This is what they did, and this is the critical topic here. Find an idea that turns into a company that issues stock. I'm going to say that one more time because this is critical. Find an idea that turns into a company that issues stock. That's how Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, and Jeff Bezos amassed their wealth. Now, I'm not saying the topics we're talking about here in the show are going to make you as wealthy as those individuals, but the same concept that they used, you can use. Find an idea that turns into a company that issues stock. Talking to financial planners, again, if they're not already millionaires in their own right, why do you want to sit down with a financial planner to plan your future? I mean, what good is it going to do? You need to create, manage, and grow your own financial future on your own terms. I've done it, and I'm going to give you some specific examples of what I've done. And again, you can do the same thing. It takes work. It's not extremely easy, but it's not rocket science, and you don't have to be a Harvard professor to do it. Now, what I'm talking about here is, again, finding an idea, whether it's your idea or somebody else's. You find an idea that turns into a company. Again, whether it's your company or somebody else's, that issues stock, that goes public. Now, you can find the idea through somebody else. It could be somebody else's idea, somebody else's company, as long as they issue stock to you. Now, how do you get the stock? Well, obviously you could buy it directly from them, or you could offer services. Let's say you're a CPA or a consultant or an advisor, that you have some value that you can impart to these companies that are either going public or already public, but they need assistance. Now, some of these small cap companies, they have really good business models, but they always lack capital. That's where I come in. I help them go to the market and raise capital, but this is where you can come in also. If you find an idea that turns into a company that issues stock, you can provide your CPA service, your financial consulting service, in exchange for equity in these companies. And you can do it multiple times. You can work with several publicly traded companies, small cap companies, that are trading for, 5 cents, 10 cents. Eventually you help them grow. And I'm going to give you an example. I'm not going to mention company names on the air, but, if everybody wants, company names, I can do it. But I don't want to mention company names because I don't want, the idea that I'm trying to promote these specific companies. But these are companies that I made money with, and some of them but one company goes back to when I first started in 1999. I had a gentleman come into my office who at the time was around 72 years old. He had an idea for a portable bidet that homeowners could use for their home. Well, I listened to his story, and I kind of thought, well, all right, fine. So I kind of gave him the bum's rush. Didn't think there was much to it, but I started doing some research on the portable bidet concept. I talked to nursing homes, veterans homes. I talked to casinos in Las Vegas. I did my research and found there was a vast market out there for an inexpensive portable bidet that you could put on your toilet without having to have all this tremendous plumbing in your house. It's very expensive. His item was less than $200, and it worked wonderfully. So I took him on as a client, and I invested a total of $25,000 to help get prototypes, to pay his rent, to get the concept going and everything like that. And for the money that I put in, plus my consulting services and making introductions to other people, I received stock in the company. Now, it was private at the time, but within 6 months, we had taken the company public and got it trading. Now, the stock started trading around 6 cents a share, but within 90 days, it went to over $3 a share. Sales were being generated, product was being developed, and everybody was taken to the company. I had gotten it into the product into the Sears medical catalog. Yes, that's how old it is. That's when Sears actually still put out these big catalogs and specific catalogs for medical devices. So the sales started increasing, the word started getting around, so the stock increased. And within 6 months time period of taking it public, I was able to sell enough of my stock to profit $1 million in 6 months. And I'm not a rocket science, and I was really in 1999, that was my first deal. That was my first introduction to what I'm talking about here, finding an idea that turns into a company that issues stock. Now, unfortunately, I kind of, after that, I thought, well, I'm the smartest man in the world. Look what I've done. And so, I used my own capital to get a fancy office, hire a bunch of employees, and have an overhead of about $50,000 a month. And it doesn't take long to go through $1 million of cash when you're spending $50,000 a month on overhead. So I learned my lesson, and then I did another deal. It was a beverage company. There was a beverage company with a bottling plant, and they bottle for some major juice and beverage companies because a lot of them outsourced it. I got equity in that company, a small amount of equity. Company went public, and within 60 days, I made $175,000 on that stock. Then I got involved with a small oil and gas company that had some small production, daily production. They were already a public company, but they couldn't get any momentum behind their story because they just didn't know, the founder knew a lot about the oil and gas business, but he didn't know anything about running a public company and how you get investment bankers and brokers to look at the stock. So I put together a program for him that we went on the road. We did a lot of road shows. We did the money show. We did a lot of conferences. We did a lot of presentations. And slowly the story started building up, and people started looking at the increase in production on the company. And I made a retainer with this company, a monthly retainer, but I also got equity. And within the first year, I sold. The stock went from 40 cents to over $5. I sold, and I made, like about $700,000, and I got all the documentation to prove that. So what I'm telling here, I'm not trying to blow my own horn. I'm trying to say that, you can do this. You can find a company, or you can find an idea that turns into a company that issues stock. Now, you can do this in a lot of different ways. You can get together with your friends, your business associates. You can network. You can do what I did. I started going to conferences, where public companies are presenting. Now, they spend money to go to these conferences for the main reason. Number one, they're trying to get exposure for their company, and they're trying to get people interested in the company that might want to invest, but they're also looking for services. Now, again, if you're an accountant, a CPA, if you're a consultant, if you've got certain contacts that, let's say, an oil and gas company could use, maybe you're a petroleum engineer, and you know a lot about finding oil. Or you're a landman, which is a term they use in the oil business, finding leases that are, that can produce. You can offer these services to these public companies in exchange for maybe a cash retainer and then equity. So this is a way that you can build for the future. You can be your own source for success. That's the reason for the title for the show, Your Source for success. You don't have to rely on anybody else. You don't have to go out and buy annuities and IRAs and other savings tools. Now, I'm not saying if you already have those, I'm not saying cash them out. I'm just saying that's not the only way you can build wealth if you're going to retire. A lot of people, like myself, I have no intentions of retiring. I love what I do, and I like passing this information along because I wish 20 years ago, when I got started on my first deal, that I had a book I could read on the subject or some other kind of lecture that I could go to for, the small cap community. There just wasn't anything out there. And when I'm talking about these small cap public companies, I'm also saying stay away from the stock market. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, look, you can't really go out, most people can't go out and buy enough stock in Apple, Google, Amazon to really make a difference. I mean, all those stocks, like Amazon, for instance, is $1,200 a share. Google is around $1,200 or $1,300 a share. How much stock can you, as the average person, can actually go out and buy to make a difference in your wealth? One share? That's not the way to go. The way to go is again, you want to be. Look at Uber, look at Lyft. The people that got involved with those companies when they were private, when they were just starting out, and really people were laughing at them. And it took a 10-year process for the people at Uber. But the ones who got involved with Uber 10 years ago for $100,000 cash out when the IPO took place, it's over $1 billion on that investment. Now, how do you find these deals? Well, it's a lot easier today than it was 20 years ago when I started out. The internet really wasn't what it is today. Yes, it was around. You had Netscape and Yahoo was just coming around. Google really wasn't around at the time, came along later. But you can go to conferences, you can research on the internet, you can subscribe to newsletters if you want. You just have to research or network. I can't emphasize that enough. I know a lot of people think of networking as, passing out cards and having a couple of glasses of wine and getting nothing done. Well, you get out of networking what you put into it. So you get out there and you network, you find out what's going on in the small cap area, what's going on in these startups that are just budding startups. But I caution you because this is the mistake I made. I did get involved with some private company startups, and I found out later on, because I didn't do enough due diligence, that they weren't ready to go public. They had no intentions of going public, and so putting money into a private company that has no intentions of going public is what we call in my business dead money. Because there's no exit strategy. There's no way for you as an investor in that company to really benefit. You want to benefit from publicly traded stocks. Again, think about Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, Jeff Bezos. If their companies stayed private, they wouldn't have the wealth that they have now. Yeah, maybe their stock would have some private value with valuations, but nowhere near what it is as a publicly traded stock. And Jeff Bezos, when he was starting out, he had to sell. He had a timeline. He needed to raise $1 million in cash very quickly. I believe he had less than 30 days, or he was going to be in serious trouble. He had to raise $1 million. So he went on, started meeting people, networking, handshaking, getting introduced, and he found investors to put in $50,000 each to raise his $1 million. Those people, for $50,000 20 years ago, are worth billions today based on that small amount of money they put in at the time. So again, this is your source for success that you can do. I did it, and I'm continuing to do it. Recently, just a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, I helped take a cannabis company, public. And for that, I helped find the assets. I helped with the early management team. We took it public in Canada, and it got a listing down here in the States. And for my activity, I received a substantial equity position in the company, which I later sold. So I'm not telling you, this is not pie in the sky. This is not something that I'm just telling you I read a book about or I attended the seminar. I have specifics, deals that I have done, and I continue to do those types of transactions even today. Now, again, you can get together with your business associates, your friends, with maybe $5,000 or $15,000 of discretionary money, and basically you could become your own investment bank. You can approach these companies, small cap companies, and some of them are troubled, some of them are solid, but they all need help in some way. You could offer, again, your CPA services. Maybe you're an attorney, a securities lawyer. You can offer your services, get a cash retainer plus some equity. You could do what we call pipe deals, private investments in public equity. You can look for deal flow. You can look for companies that make announcements about doing a reverse merger and going public. These are all things that you and your group of friends can do. You get together over a glass of wine and talk about things that you want to accomplish and get out there and do it. Now, you can also get on the radio. You can have your own podcast here on OC Talk Radio to establish yourself as an expert to get companies to call you. That's what I do. You can start a blog. You can put out press releases about what you do to help small cap companies to get the phone ringing. So in addition to your networking, you can get people to call you based on the publicity that you get. You're listening to Business Pulse Talk Radio. I'm your host, Michael Brette. Business Pulse Radio is the heartbeat of business. Today's topic is your source for success, how you can be successful by not saving money for retirement. Now, again, I'm not telling you to cash out anything. I'm saying if you already have savings vehicles going, fine, but don't rely on it. The theme for this whole show is find an idea that turns into a company that issues stock, that goes public. You can do this. Now, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying that, you snap your fingers and all of a sudden a deal falls in your lap. You might only do one deal a year. That's what I do. I try to do more than one deal a year, but, you have a lot of different competing interests out there. And, 20 years ago, it was a little different than it is today. But you can do this. And, again, you can get your own talk radio show, your own podcast, interview companies on your show. Talk about yourself. You can hire a press agent to put press releases out to give you PR. You can appear on Fox Business TV and get written up in the Wall Street Journal. Anything to generate buzz about what you're doing, and then people will call you. And then you can build up a network of small cap companies that you can create the wealth for yourself. Because, again, what I said at the top of the show is that they're startling figures. 75% of the baby boomers don't have $25,000 set aside for retirement. And 65% don't have $400 set aside for emergencies. Now, this is pretty pathetic, especially when all you hear on TV and read in financial publications is about, saving for retirement, get an annuity, put money aside in a 401k. When you're 20 years old, start early, put $100 aside, blah, 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 compound it, that's just going to get you by. If you're 20 years old, save it until for another 50 years when you're 70, and you might have a couple of $100,000 set aside. That's not enough to retire. People aren't retiring with that kind of money now. Now, I know, again, financial planners have a focus, they have a position, they have a service they provide, but in my opinion, if you're not dealing with a financial advisor that is not already a millionaire in his own right, then why take their advice on them directing your future? You need to take it upon yourself. Now, you need to make sure you form some kind of an entity like a corporation or a limited liability company that you're going to operate, because you want to operate as a business. You don't want to operate, as a sole proprietor. You want to have a physical presence. You want to have a professional environment to work in. You want to have your business cards. You want to have maybe a small brochure, a good website, a presence on social media. Again, all the elements that can bring attention to what you do to get deal flow coming to you so that you can find an idea that turns into a company that issues stock. Think about Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, and Jeff Bezos, just to name a few. Think about the recent people with Lyft and Uber. I mean, the people that got involved early with that, even the current management, and the old management had substantial equity in those companies. And when the IPO took place, they cashed out. And you can do the same thing. You don't have to be on the same level. I mean, I'm not saying, again, you're going to be a Bill Gates or Warren Buffett, but there's nothing holding you back. It's just, baby steps. Get out there, put yourself out there, talk to people, network, and eventually the deals will start coming to you. I mean, I put 20 years ago, before the internet was today, I took an ad out in the paper, small classified ad, which nobody does anymore. Newspapers are going by the wayside, and they basically don't have any classified sections anymore. But that's how I did it. I took out a classified ad, small ad, $100, and lo and behold, I started getting some phone calls from people. That's how I got the bidet company that wanted my services in exchange for equity that I got in the company. Now, you're listening. We're out of time here, so I want to thank everybody for tuning into the show today. And remember, your source for success is you. It's nobody else. It's you. Take what we've discussed here on today's show, listen to it, read the notes, the show notes that are put on at the end of each show, and think about it. Think how you can take the next step to improve your life, to improve the life of your family, your friends, network with your business contacts, and you can do it. You can succeed. I did it. I started out 20 years ago, green as it could be. I didn't really understand this particular market, but I found out when I got into it, it was a lot of fun. Things could be done, and people needed the services that I was providing, and I'm sure you have the same type of skill set that you can provide the services to these companies. I want to thank you again. This is Michael Brette. I'm the host of Business Pulse Talk Radio. We do this show every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, and I'll see you next week on the radio. Thank you.
You're listening to Business Pulse Radio right here in Orange County's only community radio station, OCTalkRadio.net.